Hello and welcome to this week's Granny's Garden. Now this week we're going to be waking up the caladiums I put to bed last autumn. Now I have two varieties in this garden. The first one is the red-green variety called Red Flash, and the second one is one of the white varieties called Florida Moonlight. So we're going to head into the basement now and get them moving. Wakey wakey, rise and shine, time to get moving. Well, here's the box, but let's see first if they survive the winter. When we're talking about caladiums, we're not talking about seedlings, which are just waiting for the last frost date before we plant them out into the landscape. Caladiums are native to Central and South America, so we're talking more about the type of heath that basil plants like, or tomato plants like. So today what we're going to do is give them a kickstart on that growing season. Now, I lifted these caladiums when the air temperature was consistently below 15 degrees. Now that's 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's take these little bags out now. Well, as you can see, I've also got some Begonia bertidi, but because today's video is about caladium, we'll put this back here and we're going to concentrate our efforts on the two caladiums that I've got, which is Red Flash and Florida Moonlight. Now, I can't plant out my caladiums in the landscape until the soil temperature, not the air temperature, until the soil temperature is above 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, how do I know when it's above 60 degrees? Well, there are soil thermometers, like a prong with a little digital reading on the top, and you just stick it in like as if it was your Sunday roast. And if it's above 60 degrees, fantastic. And if it's not, you've got to wait. Or you've got to pop them on and get a kickstart on the growing season when the time is right. If I don't have a soil thermometer, what can I do? Well, you go old school. And if you have a lilac tree in your garden, this is what you do. Old school dictates that you can plant out your caladiums in your landscape when your lilac trees are pushing out those first blooms. Here is a lilac tree in my garden. As you can see, it's definitely leafing out. And indeed, those first flowers are forming, but it's way, way away from a first bloom. So this indicates that for me, my caladiums have got to wait. So with caladiums, if I have to plant them out in the garden or in the landscape late, and I have to collect them early because they don't like the cold, then I definitely need a kickstart on the growing season. I do that by potting them up, and that way when the time comes and it's nice and warm, I'm going to have a plant rather than a tuber to plant. So the first thing we want to do is put on some gloves, because some people, not all, but some people do have allergy to handling the tuber. So let's go with Florida Moonlight first. Now these were stored in Vermiculite during the winter, so we're just going to see how well they did. So I'm just going to sift through this now. Now I'll link to the previous video at the end of this one. I planted it in the last season really, really late, so they're still very, very tiny. They'd normally be a lot bigger than this, and certainly at the end of this growing season they're going to be a lot bigger. So they are nice. Obviously they're dry. There's no moisture, there's no rotting, and they have sailed through. Fantastic. Now if I get up close, now the caladium bulb has got a knobbly or gnarly part, and it's got a flat part. Well, the flat part will go downwards and the knobbly part will go face upwards. And also they are planted shallow, not deep, shallow. Now, I've got 6 little teeny weeny ones. I'm not allergic to caladiums, so I'm just going to do this without gloves. So I'm going to put 3 in each of these little pots. So I'm just going to firm that down slightly, each little pot. And I'm just going to put that big one now in the centre, and these 2 little ones flanking it. And I can plant it all as one plant when I eventually plant it out in a few weeks' time. Same the other one, the big one there in the centre. And the 2 little ones flanking, obviously, again, the knobbly, gnarly side facing upwards and the flat side facing downwards. And now all you do is cover this lightly, because I said these are shallow. So that is sufficient. Just a little bit more on this one. And always finish with a little tap to make sure those little tubers have got no air pockets around them. Perfect. Next thing I'm going to do is label it, as always. And then I'm going to give it a good watering. And from here on in, I'm going to let my fingers do the walking. Did you know that the human fingertip is probably the most sensitive skin area in the entire animal world? Well, if you didn't, you do now. So use it. So from now on, every couple of days, you're going to stick your extremely sensitive gadget into the soil. If it feels wet, don't water it. If it feels moist, don't water it. And only when it feels dry, then water it. A good watering, and then start the process all over again until you've got beautiful plants and the temperature indicates you can plant out in the landscape. I'm going to very quickly now do the same with the red flash tubers. Now, as you can see, automatically these are a lot bigger than the Florida Moonlight. In this case, I've only got 2 of them. In this case, it's very, very easy to say which is the right side up, because you can still see last year's, if I turn it around, you can still see last year's stalks. So obviously those will be facing upwards, and again, the flat side will be facing down. So what I'm going to do is just plop them there now in the centre and cover them lightly, because these are always planted shallow. See, I'm just now touching the top of the stalks with my hand, so that's fine. Again, the famous wiggly tap. Just have a little feel. Perfect. Now, of course, I need to label them. If I can find the labels. There we go. Red flash, and of course I want to water them in. Very important. Now, some people have asked me, what can you do with all this vermiculite that you've used for storing? Well, you can either ditch it, as some people do, or lay it out. Just imagine this is a tray. Lay it out in a layer on a tray. Make sure it's absolutely dry. Let it dry completely. And then just pack it away and use it again for next year. And in actual fact, you can use it for several years. Now, these caladium tubers that I've just planted are going to go back into the house because it's far too cool to have them out here at the moment. And certainly we're going to be following their journey from the tubers through to the plants inside the house, through to the plant that eventually goes out into the landscape, because caladiums are absolutely lovely. There's such a huge variety and the leaves are absolutely gorgeous. Every colour range you can think of and every combination you can think of. So certainly come with me and follow me on this journey. And meantime, I'll see you next week here in Granny's garden, and I'll leave you with what's good in the garden for this week. Bye-bye now. Looking good in the garden this week is the Magnolia Red Lucky. It blooms on bare branches, and the blooms don't last that long, but they are spectacular when they do bloom. The blooms are absolutely massive. Put my hand behind it so you can see it. And a beautiful light pink to dark pink colour. A real showstopper in the garden. Isn't that just perfect? See you next week.